So, the other day I was playing Monster Hunter World since Monster Hunter Wilds is coming out soon, and I'm definitely going to play it. I felt like doing something related to these games, so I started thinking, and during one of my many reflections, I wondered how Pokémon would look in the Monster Hunter style, and vice versa. So, after capturing an Anjanath, I closed the game and as usual sent a message to my friend. I asked her to name 3 monsters from both games, and these were her picks: Tetranadon, Magnamalo, Bishaten, Piplup, Arcanine, Pangoro. With everything ready, I got to work, starting with the Pokémon to redesign them in the Monster Hunter style. The first one was Piplup. Before anything else, I gathered references and started with a simple sketch, gradually adding details. Once I had a decent sketch, I began painting shadows and lightning in grayscale. At this point, I realized this wouldn't be as easy as I thought, since Monster Hunter has a realistic style. I had to add a lot more details than what the Pokémon design originally had. Pokémon don't have highly defined textures, while in Monster Hunter, textures are very pronounced. And in my attempt to apply all this, I think I failed miserably. So instead of overthinking it, I applied a color layer and started repainting on top to adjust and fix whatever I could. I should clarify that it's not that I don't know how to paint realism, but the fact that this was the first thing I painted after a week without painting definitely had an impact. Plus, I feel like I struggle with adding and refining details. I'm much better at simplifying and stylizing, but despite these challenges, I finished it. Here's the result, and let's be honest, it looks awful. At least personally, I feel disappointed that I couldn't execute it properly. But it is what it is. I like accepting things as they are and moving forward. So I moved on to the next one, which was Arcanine, hoping it would turn out better now that I had warmed up with Piplup. Spoiler: it didn't get better, it got worse. For the sketch, I focused on the pose, aiming for something more expressive, dynamic and eye-catching. I also wanted to stay extremely faithful to the original design so that it was clearly Arcanine and not just a random orange dot. So I had a convincing sketch. I started painting in grayscale, and as I progressed, I refined certain elements like the eyes. But I didn't spend much time on this phase. So I applied the color as quickly as possible, and once I had the base colors down, I started repainting over them. To be honest, at this point I was starting to get a headache from seeing how badly it was turning out. But I wanted to trust that adding color would make it look better. It didn't. I don't know what happened, but the colors look really artificial. At that moment, I knew that if I focused, I could fix both Arcanine and Piplup. But honestly, I was feeling lazy, and I didn't feel like spending too much time fixing 2 drawings that had already gone wrong. So I left it as it was, and that's how it ended up. To me, it looks pretty bad, and it's obvious that there's a lot that needs improvement. I think it's also obvious that I don't like it at all. With a great disappointment, I moved on to the last Pokémon, Pangoro. A part of me held onto a bit of hope that this one might turn out okay, despite my poor performance so far. I tried changing the process a bit this time, starting with a sketch and then making a more defined drawing, finishing with some cross-hatching, which didn't turn out well. Once I finished the drawing, I started painting, and luckily, I didn't have to worry too much about the colors since the Pokémon itself is just black and white. At this point, it's pretty obvious that I had already given up and was just trying to finish as quickly as possible. Sometimes knowing when to quit is a victory, and that's the phrase that kept running through my head while working on this Pokémon. Everything was wrong. Leaving the sketch so visible made it look even less like the Monster Hunter style. The proportions and pose could have been improved, and the lack of care in the rendering made it look a complete failure. And that's how it ended up. To me, it's the worst one of all. I can only laugh about it so I don't cry. And the worst part? I still had to do the 3 Monster Hunter monsters in the Pokémon style. To relax a little, I started sketching in my sketchbook, because I feel more comfortable when I'm not recording myself. I found some reference images of the monsters, did the final sketches, took a picture of them, and moved to digital. With these sketches, I felt a bit better since I thought they didn't turn out too bad. Looking at them now though, I feel a little disappointed that I didn't put effort into making their poses different from their references. It's a shame, but I forgive myself because I was really burned out at that point. And for that same reason, I didn't do an extra sketch to refine the shapes. I just jumped straight into the line art, using a simple opaque round brush with no texture. There's not much mystery here. It's just about being patient, keeping a steady hand, and controlling the strokes. And I had none of those. I nearly broke my wrist doing all 3 in a row, though I don't think they turned out that bad. But I realized at certain points I was adding more line weight variation than I should have, since Pokémon tend to have more uniform line art. I tried to stick to that. With the line art done, the coloring was simple, flat colors with 1 shadow tone, 1 light tone, and some highlights. Sometimes I added a gradient here and there, but overall it was pretty straightforward. The first one I colored was Tetranodon, and I spent the most time on it because I started painting in a more careless way and later had to fix the areas where I went outside the lines. Next was Magnamalo. I followed the same process but was more decisive with the tones. I didn't do as much trial and error. I just focused on replicating the existing color palette. Lastly, I colored Bishaten, and this time I was more mindful of the strokes and very deliberate with the tones. And this is how they turn out. I feel like these 3 didn't turn out as bad as the others, but even so, I'm still pretty unhappy with the result. I don't know what it is about them, but something just feel off. Honestly, I'm really disappointed with how this all turned out because it was something I was really interested in doing, but I just couldn't execute it the way I wanted to. But don't worry, this isn't the end of it. I may have been defeated, but I'm coming back for a rematch. I'm already preparing another Pokémon and Monster Hunter theme video to redeem myself, and I really hope I don't mess it up. Anyway, I hope at the very least you were entertained by watching me fail spectacularly. Sending hugs to everyone, and goodbye.